Hello. Oh, what was that? That's like, that's not even a Monday hello. 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 Oh, that's a Monday hello. 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 We got to do, like, I want to get to a Friday hello, because you got to fire me up here. So I'm going to probably need a little bit of help and maybe some inspiration. If we can really get you fired up, what if I told you you could get one of these very limited edition glow-in-the-dark Atlassian shirts? How cool is that? All right, so lights back up. I'm going to need a prop. Let's get a prop here. I'm going to set this down. Let's get a prop. Here they are. So this thing will not hurt anybody, I promise. And I'm going to need 2 volunteers randomly. How about you, sir, right there, and you, sir, with a hat? Why don't you come up here? We're going to see how this goes. Listen, all right, so hold this. Now listen, if I hurt anyone in the process, my name is Mike Cannon-Brooks. All right, here we go. So I want to see, like, we're going to, huh? Yeah, we're going to get some sections to really cheer here. So right here, I want to hear this section. I want to hear this section say hello, hello. Hello, hello. All right, ready? Whoa. Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one. All right, let's go over here. Let's get some music going. Here we go. Fired up. Whoa. No. That happens to me all the time. Here we go. Let's go to this section. Hey, guys, let's hear it. Let's hear it. Oh, that one looked like it hurt. That one looked like it hurt. All right, you, sir, in the front row. Just kidding. Here we go, right in the back. Here we go. Let's hear it, guys. Let's hear it. I'm not yet. All right, here we go. All the way in the back. All the way in the back. Here we go. Ready? Whoa, whoa. Oh, I got this. Light section, 2 more. Last one. Who wants it? Let's hear it. Who wants it? I'm going for this guy right there. Ah, thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, guys. Hopefully I didn't hurt anybody. Did I hurt anybody? Did I hurt anybody? That was fun. So this is my 10th summit. It gets more exciting every year, in part because of your enthusiasm and energy. So thank you for coming and bringing your stories and your energy to Summit. Today I want to talk about a 4-letter word. Work is a 4-letter word. Certainly at work, there's lots of 4-letter words that we can say and some we can't. Done, idea, fail, make. But there's another 4-letter word that we believe is a force multiplier in all the things that we do as teams. Not this one. This actually caused us to say a lot of other 4-letter words probably at work. But it's one that we believe has the potential, to really unleash a lot of our potential as teams, to bring us closer together as teammates, to bring us closer together to the information that helps us do our jobs. And it's this, open. This should be my Steve Ballmer moment where I get all sweaty and say, open, 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 open. We introduced open about a year ago, and we talked about how openness can change the way that we think, that we work, that we interact with each other. But today, we want to dig a little bit more deeper into the practical ways that we can explore more open work together as teams and within our organizations. So we want to explore specifically ways that we can improve our shared context, explore more flexible ways for us to work together, and increase our ability to adapt to change. That's what you're going to hear about in the next 45 minutes. But before we explore that, why is this an imperative? Why is open work and increasing openness important for our companies and for our teams? And the biggest reason is just the pace of change around us. And I think it's something that all of us feel every day. If you roll back the tape a little bit, it took the telephone 75 years to reach 50 million people. Airplanes, 68 years. The automobile, 62 years. Television sets, 22 years. We're getting faster, but fast forward to today, And digital disruptors like YouTube, Facebook, Uber, Twitter reached the same magnitude of usage and users in just 2 or 3 years. Entire industries are being upended by digital disruption, from retail to hospitality to transportation. We all see it, many of us feel it. So the world around is changing too quickly for anything less than truly open and fluid teamwork. And this is causing a lot of us to rethink how we work, to move from old to new, from closed to open. When we zoom outside of what we do inside of work and inside of our teams, there's some pretty wonderful inspiration from the outside, from the world around us. Take something as basic and as common as Wikipedia, something probably a lot of us use every day. And even though it's been around for a while, this service demonstrated what was truly possible with open participation and coordination. And the result was a brand new source of information, constantly changing and being updated, that's shared between teachers and learners, between beginners and experts, between the mildly curious and the deeply passionate. Take another common example, navigation and driving directions. Waze is a wonderful service that allowed us as drivers to contribute data, both automated and observed and manually shared, to improve the driving and navigation experience for everybody that's driving behind us. Take entire industries like the pharmaceutical industry. Historically pretty proprietary and secretive, is opening collaboration to increase and boost their R&D productivity. Eli Lilly is enabling scientists both inside and outside Lilly to share biological data through the Open Innovation Drug Discovery Program to help accelerate the discovery and the outcomes of really important drugs, like ones fighting diabetes and cancer. And lastly, space, the final frontier. I do a terrible William Shatner. But the sum of our ambition here can only be realized through open collaboration and breaking down silos. It's exactly what the International Space Exploration Coordination Group is doing. 14 space agencies, NASA, the European Space Agency, the Russian Space Agency, agencies from China, India, South Korea, the Ukraine, are all breaking down, working cross-border, cross-language, cross-culture to help humans move beyond planet Earth, creating a roadmap for human exploration in the stars that I think even Captain Kirk would be proud of. And there's wonderful examples even inside this room, inside our own community. ANZ Bank is one of the largest banks in Australia with close to 50,000 employees and traditions and histories, and in some cases, they feel ways of working that date back to their beginning in 1835. They've been around for a long time. And they're going through a really important and radical transformation, shifting from more closed ways of working to more open. And I'd like to let them share their story with you.
ANZ is a proud 180-year-old organisation, and the state of banking internationally, it's going through change.
Banks have traditionally been risk-averse, slow-moving organisations.
When our CEO, Shane Elliott, took over in January of 2016, one of the first things he did was to re-establish our purpose. And our purpose at ANZ is to help shape a world where people and communities thrive.
Traditionally, our product deliveries have been, let's deliver something in a year from now, and a year later you really deliver something that's suboptimal. Bringing in Agile and integrating it with the tools really puts together quicker delivery.
A thinking that goes from top down to a bottom up, where the people who are responsible for doing the work have the knowledge to make decisions much better than being told from on high what to do.
When leadership teams say we're going on this big agile transformation, eventually at some point they're going to need some technology to supplement that change.
So using tools like Jira, Confluence, where we're not restricting access and allowing people to look at our work has been a real help for us to do things en masse together.
Knowledge becomes powerful by sharing, so that it's no longer an individual's knowledge, it's a community's knowledge.
Having this fabulous suite of tools that just enables all of that to magically happen for us is the gift that keeps on giving. I don't really understand any of how it all works, so it is just unicorn magic.
Quarter of the cash economy, we move cash around and we're doing a kick-ass job at it. Very differently to how we were doing it 6 months ago. Very differently to how we were doing it 12 weeks ago. And it is scaring the bejesus out of the team. But they're awesome at it.
I look forward to working with my team. It's a good feeling, you know, when you're working together to solve a problem rather than working by yourself.
That's an awesome story. I want to thank the ANZ team for sharing that with us. I think what you hear there is that open systems and open ways of working are incredibly powerful. I think that's irrefutable. And we believe that open work can lead to bigger outcomes, bigger shared outcomes, and ultimately more positive workplaces. Why is that, though? What do open systems provide that closed systems don't? What do open systems give us? In closed systems, information isn't shared widely. It isn't accessible, so we can't contribute or participate with it. And the result of that are often things that none of us like, the feeling of being excluded or nasty office politics. We can still build trust in closed systems, but it takes a lot of work and energy. We have to invest a lot more time and focus in building trust. And in closed systems, closed ways of working, we still accomplish things together. We just do so more slowly with more effort, and the knowledge that we're building accrues incrementally. In open systems, much of that is inverted. We flip the negatives. In open ways of working, information is accessible and it flows more freely, so we can participate and contribute and learn from it. Our collective wisdom shines as a result. I think trust is just a given. It comes naturally by default. So the outcomes and the knowledge that we're building together as groups of people in pursuit of common goals can grow exponentially, not just incrementally. Now, it's possible that you've been nodding along saying, yeah, we get it, Jay. Like, this is how we work. I share with my teams. I'm transparent as much as I can. I update my Jira tickets all the time without being prodded or nodded by my Scrum Master or my PM. I'm open. And I think this is a pretty special group that probably leans and skews more towards open ways of working than others or than closed. But for those of you getting started, I think there's two really important things to emphasize. You know, the first is that moving towards more open work and more openness inside of our teams or our environments is not some top-down mandate. It's not something that you need to wait for somebody to say, work this way, it's okay. It's something that any one of us in the room can initiate or trigger with a small change. And potentially that small change can become an inspiration for the rest of our team or for other teams around us and potentially the rest of our organization. It's a really important point. It starts with us. The second important point is that this is not a binary move. We don't go from closed to open and we're done. There's a pretty broad range of approaches and practices and behaviors that we can move across. Atlassian has been an open company since our inception, and we're still learning now, 15, 16 years later, how to work more open. And so across this spectrum, it's a journey that we can move, and the further we move more towards openness, the more impact and the more potential we believe we can unleash as organizations and as teams. Now, knowing where we are in that spectrum is pretty important to figure out what we do next and what we could do next to move further along. And so we wanted to help there, and we built a simple 6-question open survey to help you and your teams identify where you sit in this journey towards more open ways of working. These 6 questions are going to explore the areas that I talked about at the very beginning, where we can dive a little bit more deeply into establishing shared context and providing more flexible ways of collaborating and working together and increasing our ability to adapt. So this is going to be interactive. I want you to get out your mobile phone. I'm going to do this with you. Get out your mobile phone. Bring the lights up. We're going to have music in a second, but make sure you've got that super strong, reliable Wi-Fi connection or a data plan that isn't going to cost you extra money. And go to workopen.io. This is going to take us less than 2 minutes. There's a couple of questions to just identify your team size or organization size. And I'm going to fill this out and stop talking so you can concentrate in 1 minute. What you're going to see when you complete this is a score. And that score is going to be an indicator of where you are in the spectrum. You can keep it to yourself, or you can share it with a person next to you or a teammate. There's no right or wrong here. There's no bad or good. This is a journey all of us are on. So here we go. We're counting down on the top, and we're going to start to plot some results up on the graph here. We went pretty fast. Did people finish? The Wi-Fi's a little slow, all right. Keep going. Is it still working? You can keep the music going for a little bit longer. Just so I don't have to tell jokes. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. So here's sort of roughly where the room is plotting. Actually a pretty chart. Okay, so let's do 20 more seconds. Still see a lot of heads down. All right, people good? Roughly, yeah? This is illustrative, so you can take this later, but let's keep moving. There's a couple of different dimensions that we can look at this data that we haven't seen, which is pretty even. So I would have imagined here that maybe smaller companies or smaller teams would have an easier time moving more towards open ways of working. You know, potentially even younger companies have an easier time to move towards more open ways of working than older, more established companies. Maybe less to change and more to start. On an aggregate level, the room was at a 61 for those of you that were able to complete it. I thought you might be curious about where Atlassian scored. We took this survey as a company and scored a 74. And I think what's interesting there is, as I mentioned, we've been open since the very beginning. You know, a very open company, the way that we use our own tools, everything is basically open by default. The way that we approach teamwork and communication and connection is very open. You're going to hear about some of that later. And yet, we still have room to grow. We still have room to explore different ways of increasing how open we are as a company and as a team. So, you know, equally important to some diagnostic, some mile marker of where you are, I think are practical, useful tips and advice to help you understand how to advance. And that's exactly what we're going to cover in the next 30 minutes. I'm super excited to welcome to the stage 2 incredibly wonderful Atlassians, Molly from our R&D organization and Beck from our talent team, who are going to share ways that we've explored how to work more openly over many years at Atlassian. And the goal here is to leave you with some very practical things that hopefully you can take back to work next week. We certainly don't have all the answers, but we do want to share experiences that we think might be illustrative or helpful. As these 2 Atlassians take the stage, the last thing I want to share as I leave are just voices from Atlassian Atlassians inside of the company expressing in their own words how working open impacts them.
Open from a work setting means to me that the culture, the workplace, and the tools are skewing you towards collaboration that is driving the best outcome possible.
So I think a lot of the problem solving that we do in the company comes from people just doing their work in a very public forum and open to critique and to feedback at a very early stage of that piece of work.
Somehow it's like you're on the same page with not only your entire team, but 3,000 other people.
It's because it's more of a horizontal approach to the way we work. That information allows you to make sensible decisions because you see the full picture.
I don't have to ask for permission to be open. It's not a CEO decree. It's just a better way to work with it.
It's being unafraid to be wrong because it's an environment where being wrong is just part of the conversation rather than a condemnation.
It surprised me when I saw Atlassians being as open about the things going on in their personal lives as they are about the things going on in their professional lives.
I never realized that who I am was relevant to the work that I do until I came here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Chee.
And I'm Hellerman. We're really excited to be here with you today, and I'm equally excited to share the stage with Beck. For those of you who know or can read the screen, Beck is our head of talent. But what that really means is that every day, Beck and her team wake up supercharged to make Atlassians more successful. And the key component for Beck when she talks about this is to develop and grow her talent is open.
I'm so happy to be here with Molly as well. Molly has been on this open journey with us at Atlassian for the past 6 years. And most recently, it's had such a huge impact on our R&D organization, heading up strategy and programs.
So hopefully after Jay's introduction, you're more intrigued about this concept of open, and after taking the survey, you have a good barometer of where you may sit on this. And when we started sending this survey out to people, what we found was that the #1 response was, wow, I'm really excited to take this back to my teams and learn how we can become more open. Now, we certainly don't have all the answers, but as Jay suggested, we've been working on this for a long time, so we have a ton of stories. And that's exactly what Beck and I are going to do here today. We'd like to share some stories, some examples, and hopefully a couple ideas that you can take back to your teams on your journey towards open.
Okay, so a reminder, 3 areas that we think are critical to an open team: shared context, flexible collaboration, and the ability to adapt. So what we're going to do over the next 25 minutes is we're going to share an individual, a team, and a company-level example in each of these 3 areas. So let's dive right into the shared context. So when we think about shared context, we're defining this as really when teams and people are sharing information, ideas, opinions, pretty organically. We also think about this as when teams are working on mutual goals together. Now, for us at Atlassian, we knew pretty early on that if we were going to be successful in shared context, we were going to need to unite under a common belief that openness is a really good thing. And so you can see here the original draft of our values in handwriting. So open for us has been a key part of our journey from the beginning. And the basic premise of this value is creating a culture of openness, and at the same time, making sure that we're getting rid of the unnecessary bureaucracy that can sometimes get in the way of success. Setting this as a cornerstone of our culture means that you're asking employees to open themselves up and to share more of themselves. And you might be thinking, well, at a company like Atlassian, where this has been, sort of set out from the beginning, this must be an easier thing to do. And it's not. And the reason is because being open means you have to be vulnerable. It means that you have to have the strength to withstand the judgment of other people. And I think just as humans, we can probably all agree this is a difficult thing for us to do. But what we know is that the more you practice it, the better it gets, the easier it gets. And we also know there's some simple practices and tips that can help. And so I want to start by sharing the first example of how an individual practice can help you establish shared context. So I'm very excited to introduce you to Ijeoma. Ijeoma is new to Atlassian. She's been here a couple of months. She joined as a product advocate on our customer success and ops team. But she has actually a background in physics, which is interesting. She was born and raised in the US. She is of Caribbean and Nigerian descent. She talks a lot about the clubs that she joined as a kid. So she was part of robotics club and Latin club and Scrabble club and music club, and she really likes clubs. She's also into Zumba as of late. The other thing about Ijeoma is she has been personally animated into a web comic. And finally, what I find really interesting, she likes to go by the nickname of Potato, but it has nothing to do with potatoes. Now, the thing that you should know about Ijeoma is I've never met her. I just told you all this information based on the introduction blogs that I read. The introduction blog is a simple practice that we use at the company where we ask people to open up about who they are, how they work, and what matters to them. Now imagine this in your first couple of weeks at a company. At Atlassian, we're nearly 3,000 people. Everyone finds out about who you are based on what you put in this intro blog. It's pretty powerful. And we ask people to blog openly to the whole company within their first 2 weeks of joining, specifically because we want to set the tone for what it means to be your full self at work. Now, it might not seem obvious. There's some really powerful tools or reasons that this is useful. And the first one is, if you're reading this blog, it's a great way to go strike up a conversation with someone that you haven't met. You have some personal information now, and you can create an immediate connection. The second one is you often hear about people's work experience. You know, what they did at their last company, what their experience has been. And so it's a great way to start out and get immediate shared context. In this case, Ijeoma had several years as a product analyst, and so her teammates knew that going into her onboarding. And then the last thing, which is really important to us at Atlassian, is this idea that we're encouraging you to be authentically yourself. And we know from team research that when people feel safe to open up, share about themselves, that trust on the team increases and the team is more effective. And so really what we're trying to do here is we're trying to establish a sense of knowledge, care for the person and say, hey, we really care about your psychological safety, and we do that through things like the intro blog.
So if we zoom out a bit to the team level, I'd like to share an example of 2 teams and how they shared context. So in late 2017, we recognized as a company that we were sharing goals broadly really well. However, where we were having a problem is actually mapping dependencies between 2 teams. And what was happening is projects were simply falling through the cracks or not getting done. This was particularly evident and frankly pretty brutal between our product teams like Confluence and Jira and our platform teams that support them. And so the way to look at this is that if Jira had a top 5 need-to-have project, it might fall to the bottom of the list for the platform teams, or maybe not on the list at all. And this was a big problem. And so we needed a solution, and the platform team came up with one, and they called it a clam bake. So you're probably wondering, as I did when this came out, what is a clam bake? Molly, what is a clam bake? Here it is. So a clam bake is essentially an opportunity for people to get together on a beach, have some beers, share some stories, learn from each other, and of course, bake some clams. So we took this notion of a clam bake, and we turned it into a way for the product and platform teams to actually meet. Now, the first time that they did this, it was relatively modest. They did 3 simple things. First, they shared open Confluence pages and that had their plans and priorities on it. Second, they got together to meet and to talk about those and really digest that information together. And then third, they set up, after these lightweight meetings, they actually got together one-on-one or as individuals to talk about some areas that maybe needed some more attention or ironing out. It was really as simple as that. Now, the cool thing from this is that people came out of these meetings feeling that they had learned a lot, but also that they had been able to contribute a lot. And this type of sharing is something that is really meaningful in the process. Since that time, we found that a lot of teams have taken on this approach of clam bakes and created their own mini clam bakes, adapting it and adjusting it to really fit their team's needs. And of course, the original product platform Clambake has grown in its scale and in its reach, most notably starting to record the sessions, which seems like a really easy thing to do. But what we found is that when we recorded it, more people could participate and they weren't tied to a meeting room, to a certain location, or a time zone. And this asynchronous work really increased the ability for people to learn and to share. So after this example, I know what probably you're thinking, or I'm going to guess what you're thinking. This is exciting, Molly. This is really exciting. And I feel it. I feel that you're excited, especially that section there. So you're excited, but you don't like clams. Or maybe you feel this is a little bit outside of your scope of influence. Here's the thing to remember. It only takes 2 teams to make this happen. And if you don't like clams, change the name. So now, to take this out one more layer to a company level of shared context, a unique example comes in the form of Project Central. Project Central is essentially a home. It's a central registry of all the projects that are happening at Atlassian that are 2 or more people committed for 2 or more weeks. This is a ticket of Project Central for this event right here, for Summit. And anyone in the company can log into this, look at the ticket, see what's happening, track it, and if you're really keen and you want to track this on a weekly basis, you can subscribe and get that update email. Now, the beauty of Project Central is, yes, that you have this information, it's open, it's visible, we can share it. But at the end of the day, it's information that you control versus a fire hose of information coming at you. So now we've talked about 3 different areas. The first was hearing about Ijuma and it'll work. Ijuma and the intro blogs. Second, you heard about our practices of Clambakes. And of course, we just talked about Project Central, 3 ways that we share context at Atlassian.
So let's imagine now that you've established shared context, you know each other a little bit better on the team, you're establishing mutual goals, everyone's sort of rowing in the same boat. What now? We think that the next critical aspect of an open team is flexible collaboration. And these were the questions number 3 and 4 on the survey that you just took. So when we define flexible collaboration, we think of this as a sense of fluidity between the teams. And most importantly, you're ensuring that there's room for disagreement and dissent and differing opinions. And I think Shane talked about this as that cognitive friction. And so a simple way to encourage flexible collaboration in an organization is when one person or one team has an idea or a solution that they think could be useful in another part of the company, and they share it proactively. Do they have to? No, you don't have to. But should you? Absolutely. So I want to share with you an example where one person on our team helped us move along in our flexible collaboration. So it's probably about halfway through the year last year, our recruiting team knew that we had to dramatically improve our efforts if we were going to get after and hire the total number of people that we needed to hire because we're growing, which is a really great problem to have. And the problem at the time was our recruiting team hadn't quite built a forecasting model that would allow us to ensure that we made all those hires. So that's where Partha comes in. Partha, at the time, was part of our customer success team. And even though he's not on recruiting, he noticed the problem that we were having. And he thought, you know, I've built something that I think if it was translated a little bit, it could really work for recruiting. And so he approached us and offered us this new way of thinking. Now, the thing that's really important about this, I think, is on Partha's part, it takes a lot of guts and a lot of courage to come to a different team that you're not part of and say, hey, I have an idea, maybe try it this way. And on the other hand, it takes quite a bit of humility and willingness on the other team to say, well, we'll try it. Let's go for it. And thanks to that offer and that receiving, both teams, I think, benefited and probably saved us a lot of time and energy. Offering shortcuts like this is just one way that we think about flexibility and collaboration. And especially if you're able to kind of drop your ego and be open to a better way, it can really benefit both teams. So how about a team example now? Recently, our IT teams figured out a new way to work with our third-party vendors. So I'm curious in the room, how many of you all, as a sort of regular practice, work with third-party vendors? I should see like almost every hand. Yeah, makes sense. So you guys you'll relate to this. So this is kind of how it was working at Atlassian. What we were doing is sort of had our third-party vendors would come with a statement of work, critical milestones, and a final delivery date. And during these milestone meetings, we would get the feedback from Atlassians to the vendor, they would take it back and refine it, and the process would go something like that. Now, our global internal billing IT team noticed that this way of working was, could be better. And the reason is because if there was any misalignment along the way, we weren't going to figure it out until pretty far down the process. So what they decided to do instead is they asked the third-party vendors, would you be willing to show us your work in progress? Essentially, can we move from a PDF world to a Confluence world? And that meant we were no longer waiting on these milestone meetings to give feedback, but we were really seeing things real time as one team. Now, if you're a third-party vendor, you're thinking, okay, well, this sounds good, but this is a little bit of a change. And it took us reassuring the third-party vendor, hey, it's okay, we're not going to judge you for your in-progress work. The good news is for most of our IT teams are using this process now, and we're all on the same page, literally.
So if we want to look at this if we want to look at collaboration from a company level, I think an excellent example actually comes in the form of annual planning. I expected a little bit more enthusiasm, yeah. I mean, Cameron got a clap for every single server announcement. Scott got a clap for turning the lights off. I mean, this is annual planning. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Awesome. Okay, so I get it. Annual planning's not sexy. It's not super exciting. And I think I saw back there a couple of people really looking at the door and being like, is it still open? Can I get out? I promise we're not going to do an annual planning session. I promise we won't do that. Don't run, stay here. Really what we'd like to do is just share a quick story of how we use collaboration in our annual planning process. So before I get to that, just take a moment and think about how you do planning at your company. So what's interesting about Atlassian's approach to annual planning is that it's not a tops-down, nor is it a bottoms-up. It really is a tops-down, bottoms-up, and sideways process where information flows in all different directions. And because of this, we're both able to share and collaborate. Now, during our planning period, we receive sort of some fundamental background information, some guidance from the executive team, but then tactically, every team is actually planning at the same time. So through open Confluence pages, we're able to view, comment, and collaborate together in a way that's pretty impressive. In this format, tenure, team affiliation, and level have really no bearing on good comments and good collaboration. And what we've found from this is a couple things. First, we found something similar to what happened in the clam bake. Teams can better share across and map dependencies. Second, we found that a moonshot idea from a smaller team might catch the eye of the executives and change our company strategy. And third, the ideas being pursued at the company level have the opportunity to impact and change what's happening at a product or team level. What's most exciting about the planning is that everyone's agreed to it at the end of the process. So now we've talked about Partha and his willingness to work with the HR department. You heard about how our IT department collaborated with our vendors, and of course, annual planning, and how we use that in a collaborative fashion.
And so just as flexible collaboration was built on this notion of shared context, there's one more area we'd really love to encourage you to embrace on the journey to open, and that is the ability to adapt. When we think about the ability to adapt, we're talking about a vibe and a spirit on your team of continuous improvement. And it's the notion that not only are you learning from your mistakes and from your failures, but you're also taking a proactive stance of welcoming change. We talk a lot about creative friction. I know Shane also talked about this a little bit, right? This idea that if you get different ideas and diverse viewpoints together, you have a better chance of success. And we know that's true. But the thing is just because those ideas are being generated doesn't mean that a person or a team is actually going to be open to receiving those. And you probably heard the phrase at some point, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Having the ability to adapt, we're saying is fundamentally challenging that idea, is that you have to go a step further. You can't just ask for feedback. You really need to be in a spirit of welcoming change. And if you really, really want to push it further, you can ask people to prove you wrong.
So, in the spirit of proving wrong, I need a volunteer from the audience. Okay, only hand up. Come on, guys. All right, yes, you win because you had your only hand up fast enough. Come right up here through the center. A little round of applause. He volunteered. Well done. Thank you. Hi. Molly, you got to hold that right. JP.
Yeah.
All right, JP. JP, welcome. Where are you from?
Germany.
Germany. JP from Germany. He's going to crush this. I feel it already. All right, so I'm going to put this in a pocket. I'm limited on pockets, so you got to work with me. All right, so right here, I have a pen, and I'll hold it out here so you all can see it. It's beautiful. It's blue. It's an Artline 200 fine 0.4, and I'm going to tell you, this is arguably the best pen out there. It's so nice. It's smooth, good heft. Like, it fits in your pocket. It's an amazing pen. JP, what do you think?
Probably not.
Probably not. Hold on. Let me, here you go. Let me open it up for you. See how that cap works. There you go. Let me find you a sheet of paper. Give it a whirl. Here, let me hold that for you so you can really get in there. See, tell me.
Well, you can't write with it, sort of. It doesn't do anything.
All right.
It doesn't work.
I'm going to double mic on this. It seems like you have some pen experience.
Yes.
Okay, so you hear to hear. JP has some pen experience. As Ben Franklin would say, we learned this Monday, I might be wrong. What would you change about this pen?
Make it work.
Make it work.
That they can write with it.
Okay, so you can write. So make it work. What else would you change about this pen to make it better?
Well, the color, you can talk about the color. It's okay, but others might like other colors, so you might
multiple colors, make it work.
Good variety, yeah.
Okay. Anything else that you would change to make this pen better? I mean, it's pretty good.
Probably.
Here, go ahead.
It could be nicer design on it.
A nicer design.
Yes, like a little bit rounder, and you see it's big. Probably too big.
A little bit more Rubenesque. Okay, so a little bit rounder, different colors, and make it work. These are the tips that we got from JP. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming up here. Just gonna put that down there. All right, so you saw that JP was relatively easy on me there. He didn't want me to fail in front of all of you, especially since none of you volunteered. So he didn't want me to fail in front of you. And candidly, I really wasn't looking for feedback at the beginning of this. I just wanted him to confirm that this was an amazing pen. However, when I was open to the idea, when this potentially might not be the best pen, that's when I started to get the feedback. And I'm sure if JP had another 3 minutes, we would have had a long list of things that we could have improved about this pen. And so it's essentially this ability to adapt that we're looking at here. And it doesn't just relate to stationery, right, and pens. It is really something that if we are open to change and if we're open to this ability to adapt, that we ultimately are making better products and services.
So it's one thing to ask people to prove you wrong and poke holes in your ideas, and it's a related but different idea to be able to admit mistakes and failure publicly. I think if we were being honest on that quiz at Atlassian, we would probably say that we admit mistakes and share our learnings selectively. And the reason we would say that is because we still feel like we've got a long way to go before all of our teams are openly sharing their learnings. But with that said, it starts with one team doing it, and so I'm going to take the chance now and share a personal team failure. So let me go back one. So our goal at Atlassian, I hope you know, is to be as open as possible. But in the HR team, sometimes we run into that boundary of what we can and what we can't share and at what point in time. And anything having to do with your pay or your benefits may be something to give a little extra thought to. So most recently, our team was working on a relocation policy, which are the benefits that you're going to give employees when they move from country to country. And we thought that we were working in a restricted Confluence page. It's like a cringe moment coming. Because we were still actively kind of deciding what it was we were going to be deciding. And unfortunately, for the people who were watching, the employees who were watching this page, they got to see our stream of consciousness and all the different thoughts, and some of those ideas they really didn't like. And so you can imagine there was quite a reaction. we had several people contact us saying, hey, what's going on? Why did you update the policy last week and didn't tell us? And some people thought maybe we were hiding something. And we chose to answer this person's question in a company-wide FAQ. And you can see it here. It says, in short, we messed up. We were moving quickly. We started collaboratively editing. A lot of you saw it. We're really sorry. Now, I think the point here is it would have been easier to just follow up with this person one-on-one and say, hey, here's what happened. But we chose not to. And I think the reason is because we know that when you can admit failure and making mistakes publicly, and you can share what the learnings are, everyone gets to learn from it. And shortly after we posted this, we got a comment back, and Sam basically wrote back and said, hey, thanks for owning this, and also here's some things you can do next time so this doesn't happen, which is typical Atlassian. So I guess I just want to be real with you for a second about this, because this is not fun to admit your failures and then take it a step further and share it with the whole world. It's not an easy thing to do. At least it's not instinctive to most of us. But just like you heard a million times growing up, we learn from our mistakes. We know this to be true, and even the most recent brain research proves that when you can admit mistakes, your brain chemistry fundamentally is altered for the better. And so anything that you can do to share your mistakes openly, as hard as it might seem, is going to benefit you and the rest of the team.
Now, Atlassian's journey towards better understanding remote working offers a great insight into how we've adapted as a company. So we acquired Trello about 2 years ago. And when we acquired Trello, we thought that we were pretty good at remote and distributed working. I mean, look at it. Everyone had their own video conference line. We had monitors in every conference room and many of the phone booths. And we were working across 10 or more geographies and time zones. Like I said, we thought we had this down. However, when we started talking to our Trello teammates and their leaders, what we found is we really were a long ways to embracing a true remote working culture. And so what we decided to do is we decided to start to listen. Now, Trello is a recognized authority in the space of remote working. 66% of their workforce is remote. And over the last year alone, hundreds of thousands of people have downloaded their guide, How to Embrace Remote Work. I'll say it again because it's pretty awesome. You can write it down, type it up. It's How to Embrace Remote Work, the ultimate guide. So look it up. We read it. We took a lot from it. And when we did that, and when we recognized, man, Trello is the authority in this space, and we have a lot to learn, we were able to change some things. We're able to change the way that we worked, ensuring that there were a common 4 hours for all people on a remote team. We changed the way we interacted, ensuring that everyone on a remote team who was calling into a meeting was calling in individually on their own headsets with their own screen, regardless of whether they were across the ocean or sitting right next to that person in the same meeting room. And we changed the way that we included people, taking such office traditional events like SHIPIT and creating a remote version of them. Now, as Shane Snow talked about, this takes a little bit of intellectual humility to do this. And we certainly have it. As Jay said at the very beginning, we definitely don't have all the answers. But we do have a willingness to change. And that's what's enabled us to take these steps, and I'm sure the next steps that we have on this remote working journey. So we've just talked about sort of individual failure and being open to that, and being open and willing to hear that. We heard about Beck and the HR teams admitting failure and then reacting to it in a public way that the company could learn from. And then, of course, just now, Atlassian's journey towards remote working and how we have adapted along that journey.
And our hope is that in sharing these stories with you today, you've gotten a glimpse, at least a little glimpse inside of Atlassian and what some of this journey has been like for us on this path to open. We have learned that it's not enough for a few scattered individuals in an organization to be acting and working in an open way. We also know that it's not enough just for your leaders to say this is the way it should be, and it certainly we don't think should be relegated to HR's job. In fact, this is actually something that when you can get a group of people together on a team deciding together that they want to work in an open way is when this is the most powerful and when this becomes viral and starts spreading to other parts of your organization. And so I guess what we really want to leave you with is that while it can start anywhere in the organization, we know that it's teams that sustain that change.
So no matter where you landed on this journey towards open and where you scored on the quiz, we hope that you're encouraged to continue the journey and that there are some examples that we've raised here that we brought up that bring you some inspiration as you take those next steps. Now, Beck said at the very beginning, it's not easy. We recognize this is a hard thing to do because it requires us to change. And to change not only how we work, but how we interact with our teams. But we know from our comments, from Jay's comment at the very beginning, that if we are willing to change our ways of being, of thinking, of interacting, of working with people, if we're open to that, we have an amazing potential to have a supersized impact. So what we'd like to do is leave you with a couple ideas based on each of the 6 questions in the survey.
Okay, so the idea number 1 is we'd like for you to try sharing something personal about yourself or asking someone else about themselves. You might find that you have a much quicker access to connection and building on the working relationship.
Idea number 2. Share a plan or an idea with someone who's on another team before it is fully baked. You might see a new perspective.
Idea number 3, highlight something that you or your team is doing really well today and scan the company and see if there's any other place that that could be applied. You might find that others follow suit.
Idea number 4, wear the hat of a customer or someone from a different team in a meeting. You might discover a new solution.
Idea 5, no matter how hard it is, try acknowledging a recent failure with your team or team members. You might actually prevent someone else from making the same mistake.
And idea number 6, even when you think you're ahead of the game, take a moment and question it. You may discover that you have a lot to learn.
So with that, we want to thank you for your time, and we really look forward to hearing about your journey on the path to open, both in terms of your successes and your failures. Appreciate it. Thanks.
I need a clicker. So we're done. There's a lot to walk away with, but remember, maybe one of the most important things is a small change from any one of us can be a butterfly effect towards more open ways of working. The impact of that can be what we talked about, better shared context, more flexible collaboration, the ability to move faster ahead of change. The good news is that all of us in this room actually have a head start over most folks outside of this room because we're using tools that were built purposely to enable open collaboration and open styles of work. And we've worked really hard to complement those tools with things that we've discussed here, practices and approaches. We've gobbled up a lot of those in what's known as the Team Playbook. If you haven't yet, please stop by the booth in the expo hall, the Playbook booth, to discover what's in there. But more importantly, that playbook is open. It's designed to incorporate many of the things you and your teams are doing that we may not be doing, and we'd love to learn from you and package up some of your approaches and practices to help share with everyone else. Finally, I want to remind people to be back in this room at 5:15 to watch an absolute crowd favorite and one of my personal favorite examples of open work, SHIPIT Live. You get to see Dom probably in some crazy outfit. And for those of you that didn't get one of the limited edition glow-in-the-dark shirts, I want to bring the slingshot up, and we've got some great porcelain coffee mugs that I think I can reach the people in the back. But if you look underneath your chairs, there's a little gift that we wanted to give everybody in the room that you can. It's keys to a new car. Just kidding. So, hey everybody, we'll see you at SHIPIT Live. Thank you.